Hey everybody, this is Rob Azevedo from Granite State of Mind, reminding you to tune in every Friday night at 6 o'clock for live in-studio performances by some of the very best artists from around the state playing here in studio, doing what they do best. And don't forget, rebroadcast times are Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. and Monday and Wednesdays at 7 p.m.
Join me, Matt Connarton, weekdays, 4 to 6 p.m. live for a discussion about politics where we put aside labels like liberal and conservative and have a discussion about truth and what's really happening in the world.
This hour on WMNH is proudly sponsored by CGI Business Solutions, located at 171 Londonderry Turnpike in Hooksett. Serving all your employee benefits planning, design and administration, investment and wealth management, and customized business insurance solutions. They are available at 866-841-4600 or on the web at cgibusinesssolutions.com.
You are listening to WMNH-LP, Manchester's radio, broadcasting at 95.3 megahertz frequency modulation from the top of 1000 Elm Street. Our studios are located at 1045 Elm Street and licensed to Manchester Public Television Service in Manchester, New Hampshire, USA. Contact us by email at WMNH953@gmail.com or through our website at WMNHradio.org.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's that time again. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on WMNH 95.3 FM in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. John Hopwood is here in the studio with us, and I believe on the phone our guest is here, Lauren Deluca. Lauren, is that you?
Yes, I am. Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Lauren Deluca is the founder of the Chronic Illness Advocacy and Awareness Group. And Lauren, you've got quite a story to tell, as I mentioned on Facebook when I put that out today. We'll get into that in a moment. I do want to remind everybody, of course, we do have the Facebook Live stream going. So if anyone has any questions or comments or anything at all to add to our discussion with Lauren this afternoon, you can certainly do that right in the Facebook Live chat. And hello to Jenny, whom I already see in there, as well as Chris Rose. And so, Lauren, well, let's start here. Kind of give us some background on who you are and what you do and the organization that you run.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Lauren Deluca, and I'm the founder of Chronic Illness Advocacy and Awareness Group. Our organization actually came about in 2017 as a result of my own personal health care struggle when I went to the emergency room with an acute pancreatic attack and was essentially turned away for proper care. With a pancreatic attack, essentially your pancreas is digesting itself instead of the food you eat.
Ooh.
So you're literally eating your own body alive, and it's really dangerous, and it can cause a plethora of medical issues if it's not taken care of, which it did. Because I was not taken care of at the hospital, I was told specifically that opiates were illegal, which really I knew was not true, and set me out to seek to get my own health care. And throughout that process, I learned about the CDC guidelines for opioid prescribing, which were issued in 2017 to try to, supposedly to combat the opioid crisis and the street drug crisis that was going on. And I thought of myself as being well informed. I was an insurance agent, seasoned 15 years. I used to advise Fortune 500 companies. So I thought I was pretty on the up and up with politics, and then found out that this devastating healthcare issue was happening in America, that not one citizen that was not sick or impacted was even aware it was occurring. So really, our organization came to be as a necessity because I was forced to fight for my life. And through that process, I grew the organization and found out kind of what was going on. And we've done a lot of research and digging. And recently, we had actually joined. We did a trip down to Washington where we brought our research Violation of a Nation, which is a dossier that kind of explains why were the CDC guidelines issued. For years since I've come into the community of the painful illness community, I've learned a lot about disease and illness and the way it impacts your life. But the general public, prior to me being hurt, I didn't understand either. So I wanted to back into how did this even happen in America, because to my knowledge, all of the things I was seeing were illegal. And we were able to backtrack into why people were losing their medicine, why the CDC guidelines were actually issued. And it's really quite nefarious because they had launched them using the ACA as a reason to develop guidelines, essentially, and kind of put us all into this really deadly situation where we're not able to access our medicines because it was designed that way on purpose. There's the issuance of the ACA.
There's so much of that. As you may be aware, we've had Dr. Red Lawhern on the show a few times talking about that, and it's a couple people in my life, have had to deal with this. And hello,
I have
John Hopwood, of course. Yeah, I mean, John's a chronic pain sufferer, and so he really gets it too. Hello to Stefan Philbrook in the Facebook live chat. So what exactly? Oh, and by the way, I just dropped the link in the Facebook live chat to the dossier that you were just talking about, Lauren, the violation of a nation. So tell us about that. What's in this dossier? Is a word we hear quite a bit in the news these days, but a different type of dossier. But what is in this one? What's the sort of the Cliff Notes version of this?
Okay, well, last year I had actually we had been continuing to do our research, and we had dug through and found some documents that were out there for public inspection, but unless you know the inside story, they look very innocent. So we kept digging through Health and Human Services, basically public reports, and we're reading them all. And we had found that throughout those that actually our dossier is exposing why did the CDC guidelines get issued in the first place? Because we have heard for years, as you mentioned, you've had very intelligent, excellent guests on in the past that know very well scientifically that what we're seeing just doesn't make sense. And a associate of mine always says, if it doesn't make sense, it's not true. And it tends to be true more often than not. So anyway, we had done a lot of research, and we had found out the CDC guidelines did not just spring out of nowhere. And I always had suspected that because being a businesswoman, I know there are procedures, protocols. Somebody always orders things to happen, and you're accountable to someone for it. But with these CDC guidelines, everybody just pretended that they were just only under the control of the CDC and nobody could help anybody. Mm-hmm. So we went back to say, who ordered this to happen? Why did this happen? And in doing so, we had discovered a document called Living Well with Chronic Illness. And when we dug and read through the document, it is actually a 351-page blueprint for creating a live human clinical study that is going to be ran through our healthcare systems, regardless of if you have ACA, the Obamacare insurance, or not. Mm-hmm. It will hit every citizen. And right now, it's beginning through the Medicare and Medicaid systems. And essentially what they did is we have the electronic medical records that, have been used since the 90s to kind of streamline processes. And the prescription drug monitoring program was put into place in the 1990s when the first kind of pushback had came about that they said that they've seen people doctor shopping and they wanted to put a stop to that. So they created the prescription drug monitoring system, mm-hmm. which covers every prescription you get, and it's starting to cross state lines. So they took all of this electronic data and even law enforcement data and pushed them all together, and they're creating profiles on every American citizen in the country based on your race, your age, your income level, your sexual preference. I have anecdotally that women who have, or even men, sexual assault is used to construct some sort of penalty score to you as a human being, saying that your odds of abusing drugs are higher because you're from a lower poverty state or because you are of color or even because, other socioeconomic factors.
Profile.
So they've used it, and they had stated specifically that they would use these systems to determine whether or not people should be receiving medication. And as an insurance agent, it helps give me a good look into this because they're using the law of large numbers. It's statistics.
Right.
They're just figuring out statistically how much longer do they think you're going to live. And in their opinion, is the rest of your life have any quality to it? And if it does not, they will withdraw the medications and offer you hospice. And if being offered hospice, you have to deny all life-saving treatments to transfer.
Right.
So they are forcing you to choose between relief or life.
Can I say?
Yeah, of course,
and that's kind of the nuts and the high-level brush of this. But we have literally given the permission.
Hang on, Lauren. John had something.
Sometimes when you're talking on the phone to people on the radio, there is a little disconnect in time. I suffer it a lot. But first off, I'm very sympathetic to you. My father had chronic pain, and I knew people, it's kind of like a community back, what was it, in the 1990s, where they were undertreating cancer patients. My father had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was ridiculous. So many of the things that they were saying were ridiculous. Because some people were asking that like heroin be available for, end of life, people suffering from the horrible pain of cancer, which, I don't even want to think about what that could do to people.
Yeah.
And one of the things they said, it will shorten their life. And you think, where's the logic of that? But the other thing is about even taking any opiate shortens your life. And then when we were dealing with us, you realize the industry, which is hospitals, they will promote themselves on prolonging lives. Prolonging lives. So if we give you what you need so you don't die in agonizing pain, doubled over, you are going to hurt their statistics. The other thing we were talking about with Matt's other guest is, you got to realize there was a generational long thing to get people properly treated for pain, chronic pain. And it took forever against that puritanical prohibition of, you're dying of cancer. We don't want you to get high, right, or whatever.
Right.
And I have a 2015 report from, who is it? NH, the National Institutes of Health and that, where they have the statistical evidence that people that are prescribed opiates do not become drug addicts, that they actually don't, that it's not a gateway. And then suddenly, because of politics.
That's what Dr. Lawhern says, too, yeah.
And it's there. It's documented by real research because this has been going for a generation to get people adequately. Why won't this phone turn off? Sorry. We all have our technical problems, right? But it's just incredible. But I was here. You've seen me, Matt, doubled over.
Oh, yeah.
Agonized pain. I could hit 10 where you actually want to die.
Yeah.
And they're taking what they took because of the political situation of late 2015, 2016. Talk to yourself. It's an 800 number. So there you are. We're stuck because Kelly Ayotte's running for the Senate. She's attacking Maggie Hassan, the governor, for being weak on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their allies, remember, was saying Maggie Hassan was responsible for people dying.
Right.
Who was a close ally of a certain good friend of, mine, quote unquote, who I once waved the fan. Remember when he was running for governor?
Yes.
And then Chris Sununu's attacking him for being soft on crime. Suddenly, all the opiates disappeared at the VA overnight.
Mm-hmm.
These are guys, combat veterans, people that were full of shrapnel, people in pain. They took them away without any plan at all.
Right.
And it was in New Hampshire first. It was all politically driven.
Of
now,
course.
If because we were part of the Boston system too, you could go over the border and they would give it to you, which you need because you can't function.
Right.
An opiate has its reason. I'm just saying that politics would be used in such a way is disgusting and immoral. But now it's created a new industry. This is all part, I'm influenced by Mr. Connarton over here, Well, I am. War on drugs. It's all part of the war on drugs, and it's a new wrinkle to get all sorts of money.
That's why.
Not to say that there isn't a problem.
Right.
But the stuff they're saying that if I'm going to take some Percocets, I'm not going to wind up a heroin addict. We had a mayor here during one of the games who said that marijuana was a gateway drug to heroin use.
Right,
But
right.
Thank you so much for your work you're doing.
Yeah, there you go. And by the way, hello to Gia in the Facebook live chat, who is who connected us, Lauren, of course, and Bill Muckler is in there as well. Hi, Bill. But
hi, Gia.
Yes. So go ahead with what you were saying, Lauren.
Yeah, and I think what's the most interesting about what we found, and I think that we really need the public to understand is, with what we found in our dossier, Violation of a Nation, is that they have actually implemented through the Affordable Care Act what is being called health in all policies. So what we are seeing with the CDC guidelines is truly just the beginning of what the transforming the healthcare system into. As when we switched systems, they had taken private health and pushed it together with public health. And it's actually shocking when you read the actual document that the committee members that put this blueprint together for the study to take place, in their own words, have stated, the American public will not allow this to take place because they value their rights of freedom, choice, and privacy. Therefore, we will reframe this into a dual crisis so it aligns with society.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew that the public was going to reject it because it was scientifically unsound and that it was politically driven only.
Mm-hmm.
And that it is stated that if your medical needs or your life needs conflict with the society goals that they're trying to build, that they're going to deny it to you.
Right.
And so we've basically made a system that you are going to deny. You're going to live or die or get services based on how a private healthcare service has coded you as a human being based on whatever data points they're using, because they don't allow the public to know the 80 data points they use to configure who you are as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, there's your death
even
panel.
either.
There's your death panel. Remember, we heard all about the death panels. Yeah.
They were not taken out. They were not taken out. They were hidden in a very small section. And if you follow the paper trail, they have left a number of blueprints. The National Pain Strategy itself was actually issued 2 days after or before, the CDC guidelines. They're actually directly interrelated. So what we're watching on TV right now with the HHS, Interagency Task Force on Pain, that was brought together to kind of figure out the best practices for pain, that was actually strategized as they knew that patients were going to need help when they took away the opioids through the CDC guidelines. So they created a counter strategy that makes it appear that our voices are being heard, when in fact they're just executing the plan to develop a human clinical trial with an organization called PCORI in charge of it, who is accumulating a lot of the data. They're sending it through Brandeis University to promulgate the data, and then they do their statistical analysis, view it the ways that they need, and lay down public health strategy. And all of these strategies are really to step therapy medicines out of our hands. We have joined the Opioid Summit for the past 2 years, which is put on by the Behavioral Health Network, SAMHSA, the addiction community. And I've been watching in detail that they have been laying down a groundwork for a stimulant crisis, which isn't even in the papers yet, but they're manufacturing it in Washington actively, and they have been for 2 years. As you can see, in August 2018 was the first publication that they said fentanyl hit the cocaine supplies. In my personal opinion, this appears to be a market rig more than anything else. This is big players coming together, concocting propaganda, and pushing, money and narrative in the direction that they want. And we have every agency involved, and every agency playing, a game of not me, it's not my job. But they are actually all working together, just not admitting to.
Yeah. Hello to Heidi Hamer, the Honorable Heidi Hamer, who joins us in the Facebook live chat. And Jenny says it's easier for the government to kill us off than to treat us. And Gia agrees with that. You know, like what we were talking about before.
I would have to agree too.
Yeah.
Within the documents and the reports we saw, they actually anticipated, because of the baby boomers, the first baby boomer collected their Social Security disability in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
This was all strategized because the Social Security disability system was about to be cashed out by all the baby boomers.
Yeah.
That was a major problem as well for the Social Security system. And they had already, the CBO office anticipated growth in health insurance expenditures to increase from $2 trillion to $47 trillion in the next decade because of the baby boomers. So
Right.
this is all designed for market, saving money and strategizing to be able to, in my opinion, launch universal health care to say, well, look at how well Obamacare performed. But the issue is it's not performing right. It's been weaponized.
Well, if you think about it, you know, it's interesting and I never thought of it this way, but it's interesting what you're saying about, you know, having a way to sort of kill off the baby boomers, which is an indelicate way to put it, but it sounds like that's what's happening from the situation you're describing because you're right. I mean, you know, economists talk about it all the time, you know, the looming crisis with Social Security and whatnot in terms of all these people who are now at that age or are about to be that age collecting, but you can't you cannot if you're a politician, it's very, very difficult to address that in any meaningful way. And I'm not advocating cutting for Social Security. I'm just making an observation that it's very difficult to address that in terms of cuts because, say, for example, you're running for president. You can't win the presidency without carrying Florida, and you can't carry Florida if you start talking about cutting Social Security or raising the retirement age any more than we already have or anything like that. So it sounds like what you're describing to us is sort of a backdoor, you know, and quite nefarious, clearly, but a backdoor way to deal with that. Okay, we can't cut Social Security. It's politically untenable. So instead, we'll use the healthcare system to kill some of these people off, and that'll ease the burden on the Social Security system. I mean, do I kind of have that right from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when they put this together, there was many co-strategies that were brought into it, and I think Social Security was a driving force of this. They knew that the cost of the Social Security system was ready to pay out, and the healthcare costs as well were going to be skyrocketing because they were going to age. And we have, up until the last couple of years, the anticipated length of life is longer. For the last 2 years, we have a decline in life expectancy. So if a baby boomer is going to collect only till 78 versus 90, that's a lot of money you're going to save on healthcare expenditures,
That's
potentially food stamps, assisted housing, or whatever else they may need.
You're right.
And what it seems to be is low-hanging fruit. And even politicians at this point are almost passing legislation on opioids because at the end of the day, politicians have a job just like anyone else does. They have resumes and they need to build up their resumes.
Yes.
Well, if you can pass a ton of easy laws to build your resume and make it from state rep to potentially governor one day,
right,
this is a very good opportunity to exploit.
Oh, Lauren, you just said something. You just crystallized something that I say all the time. It's about resume building, and that's why we get so much bad and harmful law, because professional politicians, they're not in the business of solving problems. They're in the business of looking like they're solving problems. Or trying to, because they have to look like they're doing something, even if it does harm. And this is a great example of it. And it is, and I use that phrase all the time, resume building. They try to pass laws, even if they do more harm than good. They need something so that when it's time to try to win re-election, some things they can put into a campaign ad. And it's a resume. It's, look, I did this, I passed this, I sponsored this bill. Doesn't matter if what they've done has just, decimated entire segments of the population. They just have to look like they're doing something. And then, of course, you know, their constituents fall for it. Oh, look at all that stuff they did. I guess I'll vote for them again. That's why everybody always says, you know, oh, throw the bums out. We're so tired of Congress. Throw the bums out. Oh, except my bum. My bum's okay because I just saw a campaign ad highlighting all the legislation that he or she passed. Doesn't matter if it did harm or good. They're doing something. I'm going to go ahead and reelect them. It's all those other people are bums, but not my guy. By the way, Lauren, I just want to say in the Facebook live chat, hello to Peter White from the Morning Show with Peter White. Also, Rhonda is in there. Hello, Rhonda. And Wade Hall, who is Wade is actually Gia's co-host on the show that she does online called Blunt Force. And Rhonda says evil personified. I assume she's referring to the politicians, you know, we were just talking about. And I always say, too, I think to really get to really ascend in national politics, to get that far, it does require some level of sociopathy, you know, to really, because you end up having to hurt a lot of people to in a way, it's.
Funny, I had a conversation very similar to that this morning. They have to emotionally shut themselves off because they do know they're going to harm people. And essentially just passing laws to, you know, make sure they get back into office. And I think a lot of it is self-justifying. Well, if I don't do this, I can't be in office and someone else will do something worse. And that's how they we see people, you know, slowly sell themselves out. And that's how we got here.
Right.
And we need some politicians who are going to stand up and say, you know, all right, I get it, it's unpopular, but we have just crossed the realms here into complete twilight zone.
Yeah.
Where we have people on deathbed crying for help and being blood drawn to see if they carry the dream for addiction. People are being tortured medically across this country in the sake of R&D.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is something that, you know, that is something every citizen in this country and around the world to get behind.
Mm-hmm.
Illegal human clinical studies. And the reason that they are actually engaging into a clinical study, an active one, because population data gets gathered all the time to try to see what's going on with the population. But they're not actively usually telling you what you can and cannot do with a certain person. At the opioid summit in Georgia, which we attended a few weeks ago, and were inappropriately removed from once they found out I was in the building.
Ooh, I want to hear that. I want to hear that story in a minute. Yeah.
Yes, but we had actually we had on film, and all of this will be released to the public in the next coming months. We're splicing it and dictating it all now. They had specifically stated that they have cities that they have approached hospitals, and actual hospitals that are taking in people from the city are actually being ran as clinical trials, where one hospital has been told that these types of surgeries are only going to get X amount of pills, and you tell us how it works. And then they go to another hospital and have them a different variable, and then another hospital is being run status quo. So they are technically engaging in human clinical trials and torture, because when you're in your private doctor's appointment, we had inquired, you know, if you're running a clinical trial through a hospital and this person just had surgery, what are you doing to make sure that person's not suffering? Because you put them in a clinical trial, you didn't tell them that they're being studied. They didn't sign anything saying that they're permitting it.
Right.
And they said, well, you know, they could just drop out if they don't like it. I said, how are they supposed to drop out if they don't even know they're in the clinical study, and the doctor doing it to them might not even know? They just know they got it from the boss that they're not allowed to do anything else except for that. And if they issue anything else, they lose their job. So we have full engagement of human clinical studies and torture happening across this country illegally, as there isn't one federal mandate that came through a proper legal chain to allow this to happen. Interestingly enough, in actually February 2019, the FDA released a statement for immediate release without any commentary, stating that they were rolling back informed consent on human clinical trials. So they're actually going out with this study and implementing it, and then they recognize a law they're violating, and they're just undoing that law and making it not law.
Right.
And they actually destroyed that document off the internet since we brought our report forward. So I embedded it hard linked to my website, because they're attempting to destroy all the citations, so that anyone reading the report can't see the citations that prove everything that we said.
By the way, what is your website for people who want to look online while we're talking?
Oh, yes, great. It is CIAAG.net.
Okay, CIAAG.
We have the full report and many documents on there along with our partners. We're actually going through a huge website upgrade to make it a little bit more user-friendly because we're really going to be amping up our state leadership program to get boots on the ground in all 50 states, because we know that there are 8 states that are running as pilot states, and each of those states are running a different study on their population. Pennsylvania, for example, because this is health in all policies, they're actually going to your home and they're asking if they can inspect your health on the inside. And what they're looking to do is identify ergonomics that potentially could be leading to your back pain. And then they will tell you, you need to buy a new bed. All of this is on recording from the Opioid Summit. They were talking about engaging the next phase of the trial. They're going to try to force people to buy new property. And within the document, it stated in the Living Well with Chronic Illness, the blueprint as to how they were going to get the American public to do it, they're tying it to consequences. There was a very specific section saying, Americans especially, but human behavior in general, reacts based on consequences. If you do not develop consequences, we can't get the public to do it. So we will develop consequences if you don't comply, like the doctors who are being raided and thrown in jail for standing their ground.
Right.
And how far is this going to go? Where will they develop this out to? Because we just now, for the first time, scratched the surface as to what is really going on. The CDC guidelines were not issued because of the opioid crisis. They were issued as a part of changing from a fee-for-service healthcare program to an accountable care organization. So it's actually a restructure of the entire healthcare system they're trying to do behind the scenes and not get caught. But unfortunately, they have been caught. And we hope that instead of continuing to bury the story, continuing to spin it and publish more false media, we start to get ahead of it and start just cutting the crap, really, because this document was not denied. We met with almost a dozen offices. Congressmen left their own meetings instead of leaving us with the aides to talk to us about it because of how serious this document is. This was never supposed to be meant for public consumption.
By the way, Jenny did share the link in the Facebook live chat to your site. And I want to say hello to Christian Cunard, who joins us in the Facebook live chat. And if you're just joining us, we are talking with Lauren Deluca. She is the founder of Chronic Illness Advocacy and Awareness Group. Gia says in the Facebook live chat, this is scary stuff on par with the surgical horrors of women who go in for an endoscopy and have no clue medical students are allowed to practice pelvic exams while they are under anesthesia. Oh,
wow, that's new knowledge to me as well. There's a lot going on with healthcare. There was actually some stuff going on yesterday that, although it's focused on abortion rights right now with the Religious Freedom Act, there are serious concerns from our end. Is that if this is permitted to stop certain services, where will it stop? And as we all know, if you give someone an inch, they take a mile. So we have to stop these types of things, even if they're not necessarily hitting our direct movement, because these are really American civil and human rights that we are defending, not pain medication. We're defending the rights, freedoms, privacy, a freedom of press, the freedom of speech, because as we learned at the Opioid Summit, the DEA has openly partnered with all mainstream media outlets, the big ones, and they are telling them what is and is not allowed to be published regarding drugs. So we have lost the free press in America. It's gone.
Well,
That's the reason we have yet to see this published.
We have
press has been told they're not allowed to.
Yeah, we have a very compliant corporate media in this country.
Yes, we do.
Big media.
It's very hard to break through there.
They're essentially stenographers who are told.
And we're hoping that enough pressure and enough people keep talking about this, they will have no choice but to start rolling back. Because within the blueprint document, the CDC guidelines for opiate prescribing were the very beginning. They're actually planning to develop a multitude of health guidelines. July 18th, 2018, the guideline clearinghouse from the AHRQ, which is the government, private arm of the government that does scientific research. They closed down their entire clearinghouse of 20 years of best practices in all medicine. And they had issued a statement that summaries would be published going forward, and that doctors used to be able to access this website, go into it, try to figure out, what is going on with my doc, what is going on with my patient, go into the clinical research and make really good clinical sound decisions. Now they did destroy 20 years of research. They're publishing summaries only because they are in the middle of developing what they are going to be calling, and they're currently already calling, evidence-based practices.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence-based doesn't exist. We've actually tracked the grant money, and we have grant money running in active hospitals where you potentially are a patient. And when you go to the doctor, you're not being seen as a patient. All of your records are being forwarded up to be implemented into a study.
Yeah.
So your needs are not the doctor's priority anymore.
Right.
The study is.
So tell us, Lauren, about I'm dying to hear about this the event or the conference that you got thrown out of. Kind of set the scene for us, please, and tell us what happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I attended in 2007, in 2018, no problem. I actually talked to a lot of attendees. I even spoke with the Secret Service despite protocol. So this year really surprised us. I attended with my associate, Shasta Harner, who was right beside me and helping writing this entire report and its findings. And we had just attended the first day, no problem. They actually, a week before the summit, we received an email that they had changed the summit, the curriculum. So they added sections to talk about pain for the first time, and I strongly believe it is a result of what we brought forth a few weeks prior. And President Trump had made an announcement that he was now going to attend the conference when previously he was not.
Oh.
So we went the first day, no problem. We spoke with all the speakers. We were taking film with a very obvious camera sitting in front of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
No issues. The second day, where they were really going to get into the meat of the discussions, the discussion I brought up earlier about the clinical trial in the hospitals and us inquiring, what are you going to do to make sure that you're not hurting people? Nobody signed up for this clinical trial. A group of women actually waited outside of the room for me, and my associate was actually already out of the room, and she overheard them. They didn't realize we were together, essentially saying, this woman is a government conspiracy theorist. We have to get her out of this conference. She can't be here. Wait for her. I went out, and they said, and I started saying, you're not allowed to film. Who are you? And I said, ma'am, I don't know who you are, but I absolutely am. And we went immediately to, security. I anticipated an issue. Went to security, reported it, apologized profusely. The summit speaker, the security of the summit, and the security of the hotel circled me, surrounded me, promised me nothing would happen to me at that event. A few hours later, I attended a actual class ran by Andrew Kolodny, who was giving his usual heroin pill, everybody who has pain is actually mentally ill and isn't in pain speech.
Oh, jeez.
And he requested no film, which we respected.
Right. And
then a few hours went by. At that point, he's the only gentleman at that entire summit that knows who I am by face.
Okay.
Within 2 hours, I was sought out by security by name. I was sitting in the Brandeis University class where they were teaching. They were going to reveal what data points they're using to categorize us.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting anxiously waiting to gather that information because I know anecdotally they're using discriminatory information that is protected by the AGA. We were grabbed by security. Someone had come in, found me in the front of the room, pointed to me to come out. I had, obliged, followed him out, and brought my associate with me and asked, what's going on? And he said, is your name Miss Deluca? Yes, it is. Give me your badge. Your access is revoked as of now. And I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean? I paid money to come here. You're filming, and you have been asked several times to stop filming. Give me your badge. And I said, what? I said, actually, that's the exact opposite of what happened. What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So we went straight over to the gentleman who assured me I was safe. And at this point, he was posturing. Tall gentleman, about 6'2", chest puffed out, arms across. I said nothing of the kind.
Oh.
And it's because they found out I was there to gather information and I was not on their side, essentially. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to be drinking the Kool-Aid.
Right,
So
right.
once they found out I was there to challenge the event, they sought me out by name, these gentlemen, and essentially I wasn't going to put myself in a position to be arrested.
Yeah.
It was very clear that they had an intent to not have me there, so I accepted the situation
Yeah.
and just started to walk away.
Right.
The two security guards were not average security guards. They had the headpieces. They weren't quite Secret Service. They arranged Secret Service at every door as they were walking me out. I don't know what they expected, but that's probably normal protocol.
Probably.
But I got into my elevator, which normally they would just follow you to the elevator
Yeah.
to make sure you're leaving the premise. They didn't do that. They let me get in the elevator. I said, well, good, at least they're not following us all the way up. They locked the elevator as we went up. They locked it and then retrieved it and sent it to the basement. And then we were able to go back up. And when we got back up to the 15th floor, the two security guards were situated at the top. So it's technically false imprisonment to lock someone into a room, even if for a moment. And, being a medical patient, I didn't appreciate being locked into an elevator, period.
Wait, Lauren, we got to back up here because this is interesting, but I'm not 100% sure. I just want to make sure I understand and for the sake of the audience too. So you get into the elevator, so they take you to the elevator with the presumption you're going to get in the elevator and leave, right? Because they've told you have to leave. So you get
going up to my room because I was staying there.
Oh, because you were
in my room to leave.
Okay, so you were staying. So you were in the hotel where the conference center was.
Yeah, so they couldn't get me to leave the entire premises if they wanted to.
You had to go to.
They had to. So they actually.
I get it.
Tried
Okay.
to send me to my room. So I agree. And I went to my room, and
Yeah.
instead of allowing that, they locked the elevator so that they could follow me all the way there. Which normally you could have just gotten on the elevator and followed me.
Right.
It was a clear intimidation tactic.
So they get on the elevator with you to make sure that it goes directly to the floor where your room was.
That's actually what they did not do.
Oh.
They should have. That's what normally would happen if someone was doing something wrong.
Okay.
But they didn't. They followed me to the elevator.
Yeah.
They allowed me to enter the elevator with my partner and watch the doors close. So I said, all right, they must be leaving.
Yeah.
No, they were not. They locked the elevator. They let me go up to the 15th floor, probably to see what floor I went to, and then they hit lock. And then they retrieved the elevator. It started going down on me all the way to the basement, which is 3 levels down the first floor.
Yeah.
So it was lower level 3. Then the elevator was released and the doors were opened. So we just kind of looked at each other very confused
Yeah.
and hit 15 again.
Yeah.
When we went up back to the 15th floor, these two security guards with their earpieces were there communicating with someone about me and said, let's go. And I said, what? I'm just shocked at this point. And I did have my camera out to document what was happening because I was concerned I would be falsely arrested
Yeah.
for nothing. And they put us into our room and said, essentially, it was heavily implied if they saw my face outside of that room, there were going to be serious problems. Now I'm a guest in this hotel, and now you just put me in my room and threatened that I better not come out.
Like you're a child. Like you go to your room and you stay there, Missy.
In the hotel.
Yeah.
And, of course, nobody's returning any money. And then they make it even worse. We stay in our hotel room, clearly very upset, but just dealing with the situation. 1 a.m., the door, someone starts banging on the door, very loud. Police. Why are the police here? So my partner and I are in bed, and she's trying to take a shower at the time because we had a long day. It took us a minute to get to the door. They kept banging on the door. Give us a moment, sir. I'm hooked up to a feeding tube because I eat overnight through my feeding tube, so I need to get unhooked. She needs to get dressed. And they continuously bang on the door. And, we both had the impression they were ready to kick it in. They said, open this door, ladies.
Wow.
We're like, give us one moment, please give me a moment. There were 5 police officers, 2 women. So they brought women because we're women and men cannot touch another woman. So and they said they received a phone call that there was something going on in room 1508. They didn't say what. but they knew my room number. No one knew my room number.
Yeah.
Nobody even knew exactly where I was. So
Right.
someone, either the hotel or the individuals who brought us to our room, has called the police and filed false charges, or a false report.
False report.
That something was occurring that was not, and that just essentially just another intimidation tactic. Send 5 police banging on the door to scare them in the middle of the night. And we ended up having to literally sneak out of the hotel the next morning, as my associate Shasta had gone down to get coffee in the morning because I was concerned about leaving the room. I did not want any trouble.
Yeah.
And by the time she left the room and came back, they had decoded her card, so she couldn't get back into the hotel. So at that
Wow.
point, we had a very serious concern that something might happen, and we exited the hotel. Basically had to sneak out because I was afraid something would happen to me,
Yeah.
just trying to leave. And we've contacted the 2018 the RX Summit themselves. We've contacted the Hyatt Hotel, who assumes no responsibility, and no one will return any of the money, despite they did not allow our attendance based on my name.
Yeah. Wow, that's awful. That's awful. Rhonda in the Facebook live chat says perhaps Monkey Boy was making an example of you.
I actually am fairly certain I know who called the cops and who had me removed. Dr. Kalani is the only person there who knew who I was, and it just speaks volumes of the unprofessionalism of this person.
Mm-hmm.
The type of behaviors they're childish. People do not behave this way in the professional world. But, I mean, I did it. I did 2 weeks prior ask Congress to investigate him.
Oh, no kidding.
He doesn't like me,
Right.
but that does not give you the right to have me removed from conferences based on lies that you're telling the security.
Right, right.
And that is what occurred.
Wade Hall in the
I've
Facebook.
been told a long time that he was a ruthless type, and if you get in his way, he'll do these types of things to you because he's just known for it.
Wade Hall in the Facebook live chat says this is shocking. Now, how long ago was this? When did this occur, this whole thing?
We brought our report to Washington on April 8th.
Yeah.
April 9th, actually, we were very surprised by it ourselves. April 9th, the FDA had issued their statement. So it seems very clear that this report, and we held meetings April 8th, 9th, and 10th with various Senate and congressional offices. During those 3 days, we had a statement of the FDA was issued immediately, finally, because I strongly feel we had requested it. It was a very big portion of what we had requested in those private meetings. I cannot discuss really everything that's said, or they won't meet with me anymore. It's just the way that politics works. And that's kind of just a difficult thing working with advocacy because everybody wants to know what was said. And I can't tell you everything, but I can say that from this report, we have seen the FDA immediately issue a statement in Divior, which is not actually written in this report at all. But we did heavily discuss in Divior, who is the manufacturer of Suboxone. And I'm sure you've seen some of it, that we've been seeing a really big push across the country to put pain patients on Suboxone, which is untested. It's dangerous because it could block you from needing if you need surgery, you're not going to be able to be put out. And it's just a very dangerous and even more addicting drug than regular non-synthesized opiate. So it's truly a market rig that's been going on with our government assisting. Their revenues have gone up double digits in the first quarter of 2019, solely attributed to the U.S. government's push to sell their products. This is the first time I'm watching the U.S. government work to sell a product. Because at the end of the day, Suboxone is still a pharmaceutical drug.
Well, the thing is, though, I mean, in a broader sense, you're giving a specific example, but in the broader sense too, I think the government, is in the business of selling specific products and so forth. I mean, the pharmaceutical lobby obviously is very powerful in Washington, and I think that has a lot to do with. We were talking earlier about the war on drugs, and, I refer to it as the government's war on the American people. And, the pharmaceutical lobby, of course, they try to influence politicians to make sure that cannabis, for example, continues to be illegal, because in states where medical cannabis is legal, and even more so, of course, where they've decrimmed or legalized more broadly, there is a tremendous drop in the use of pharmaceuticals. So they have a vested interest in making sure that cannabis continues to be illegal, and to the extent that they can, and continue the war on drugs. And of course, you have the private prison lobby, also very powerful in Washington. They're also very heavily pro war on drugs, because they want to keep those beds filled. So they want people to continue to be sent to prison for possession and use of cannabis and other things. So you're giving an example of something that I think is a larger truth, and that that's pretty much, it's all a business. It really is, and that's what drives. You were talking earlier about how someone had said, what was it? If something doesn't make sense,
it's not true.
It's not true. I always say, if something doesn't make sense, follow the money, because it probably does make sense, and there's a profit motive involved. It makes sense to somebody. It might not make sense to you or me, but it makes sense to whoever is profiting from whatever the scenario is. And this is no different.
Yeah, exactly. My team and I, in my discussions, I often say, we keep telling the government, it's not working. Well, maybe it is working. Maybe this is the goal.
Right.
I mean, the people who are in office, they are very intelligent people. They have groups of people that work for them to gather the proper information. And the answer from all legislators has been ignorance, that they didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they know. I have personally emailed every single office in Washington myself. They do know. They have the information. Actually, the Wellbeing Trust was an organization that came together to really be the constructor of this. And Newt Gingrich and Patrick Kennedy are the founders. So we have old politicians creating organizations that are telling the current Congress what to do.
Oh, sure.
So this is all just a big part of the good old boys club, where everybody takes care of everybody, except if you're not in the club, you lose.
That's right. Rhonda said in the Facebook live chat, "Yep, good old monkey boy Kill Odney." So kill in caps, Kill Odney. She wrote it. So that's exactly who she was referring to with that comment. He's essentially become the mouthpiece of this movement, of the anti-medicine movement. It's fully aware that he isn't really the brains of the machine. He's just the mouth. Because if you watched him for many years, and I haven't even been in this for that long, he is literally just repeating a script. Yeah.
He doesn't change anything he says. It doesn't change with the times. It doesn't change with new information. It stays the same as anybody would who's running a propaganda campaign.
Sure.
Which actually I found shocking, and it makes a lot of sense in this light, that in 2012, Congress passed a law to legalize propaganda. Why would the government ever want propaganda to be legal? Which means the news can lie to you, and the media can lie to you and not be held accountable for it now, because they needed to be able to lie to you to engage the study, to engage the type of false social information to get the social support to do this to us, because the community they picked is the weakest community. And once you secure it into law and into a process, you expand out. So right now we're actually watching them expand out to another category of drugs in private conversation that the public isn't aware of yet. And they're lining up to remove stimulant medications with a really off-the-wall statement that adults use cocaine because they were given Ritalin when they were a child.
That's
stuff
news
they make
for
up
the
is just
70s and 80s.
I mean, I've heard the gateway drug argument 1,000 times, and I said, well, if we want to play that game, I'll say marijuana was the gateway before you tried heroin and you're legalizing it. So stop with the semantics.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, this is Matt Connarton Unleashed, and we're talking with Lauren Deluca, founder of the Chronic Illness Advocacy and Awareness Group. As you may have heard, John Hopwood has returned.
And you don't remember when you were, at Studio 54 that it was Ritalin that got everybody on coke in those days?
Yeah. I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that was the case.
No, I don't even remember there being Ritalin.
No, I don't either. I don't remember much though.
There was Dexedrine, if you're a little overweight, but then there was cocaine to handle. You didn't need Dexedrine.
That's right. Gia posted something in the Facebook live chat. She says, "I have concerns for Lauren's safety in light of the Siaban Reynolds case." And I'm going to go ahead and click that link because I don't know what this is, but what is this, Lauren?
Siobhan Reynolds was she was an activist, actually. I read about her a little bit, and actually when I read her bio, it is almost verbatim as though it's mine. And Siobhan's death has always been questionable if it was truly an accident. Her private plane, I believe, malfunctioned, and she died. Very shortly after she testified against the DEA to Congress. There's been a lot of just kind of whispers that this woman's death was no accident.
Yeah, the link here that Gia posted, it's to time.com, an article from January 3rd, 2012. Champion of pain relief, Siaban Reynolds, dead in plane crash. The pain community loses a pioneering activist. So there is a theory out there that this was not necessarily an accident?
Yeah, that's been a long-running theory because Siobhan didn't just die. Siobhan's husband died, Siobhan's lawyer died, and Siobhan's best friend died.
Were they all on the plane?
No. They were all separate deaths within 1 month.
Oh, wow,
Don't quote me on
really?
that. I might have the timeline wrong. But there has been a lot of suspicion because her and all her closest allies were all accidents or random suicides in a very short period of time.
That's
it just makes it look very alarming.
That is suspicious.
And what are the sources for that?
It's all anecdotal. So
it's all anecdotal.
Yeah, who knows the truth? I wasn't around back then. I will say, what we have discovered was definitely not for public consumption.
Right.
I'm not going to say that I do not. I think it is reasonable to say that there is people out there that are very angry I brought it for.
Mm-hmm.
And, these people do have power in money, things I do not.
Right.
So I would say my safety might be an issue.
Yeah.
And I have written an extensive letter in the event anything does happen to me because, of course, I'm hoping nothing like that would happen, but we are tampering with billions of dollars.
Well,
and at the end of the day, that's what's happening. When Indivior was indicted on April 10th, the stock market tanked $247 million that day. Never mind their future business plans and the amount of capital that they will lose if they do not get away with what they've been pulling. And we have put holes into it. So I'm sure that, there are plenty of people out there that absolutely hate me.
Well,
but at my point, I know what I'm doing is honest. It is right. And I hope that at the end of the day, that will keep me safe and that, people's eyes on me, being public, telling people what is going on instead of private. Hopefully we'll get that public conversation going so that nothing nefarious does happen. As I have, unfortunately, experienced political attacks on my health care. Phone numbers have been assigned to my my own personal medical chart to lock me out of it. They tried to stop me from getting my surgery in August. I was illegally bumped off my health care 4 times, and my state senator opened an investigation into Mass Health as to why every week my coverage was canceled. My coverage would be canceled or bumped.
Yeah.
So someone within the system continuously touched my care until my state governor stepped in or my state senator stepped in because after the 4th attack, she admitted there is something wrong here.
John had something. Go ahead.
Siobhan Reynolds' husband died 6 years before she became an advocate. So.
Oh, okay.
The way anybody, I think that to be honest, going down those lanes when you think you're being persecuted, everything aren't going to help much because then you're going to be, you're a nut or something. The way they will get you. The way they get
and
you.
that's something we work really hard to stay away from. We do not want to have that type of label onto this because this is a very serious human rights issue. This is nothing about conspiracy. This is about business. And that's really what it comes down to. This is just big business. And if it is said the wrong way, it could quickly be turned into conspiracy theory, and that would do great. It will ruin the progress that we have made for the community. So we really want to try to stay away from those types of conspiracy issues and just focus on what we see ahead of us and the business plan that has been laid down by Washington.
What's more likely to happen to somebody, or like a doctor who would be saying, well, this is ridiculous, is they would get hit with an indictment. Because we had somebody running for Congress last year on Matt's show, real liberal and everything. Oh, I'm going to put all the doctors in jail. Remember that? For giving opiates and stuff.
I'm trying to think of who you're referring to. Who are you referring to?
He was one of the guys, the prosecutor from out in the seacoast. He was a younger guy. I don't remember his name exactly.
Oh, I know who you mean.
But he was running
I'm blanking on his name, too.
Yeah, I remember him here.
But I know
that's
exactly
the thing. Everything, the message was so good, and then suddenly he's going to throw all the doctors for prescribing opiates. And see, because I'm reading a little bit about her case, and she's been harassed legally, because they're going to go after allies of hers or a doctor that might say, well, this is ridiculous, these prescribing guidelines. And then they're going to they're going to take a microscope and just start looking at you and go through everything.
So they can discredit you.
That way they can really, it's much more likely they're going to ruin you that way.
Right.
The other thing is, that's very truthful. And I'll just say one other thing. The greatest investigative journalist of the intelligence community, which I was part of, was Seymour Hersh. And, My Lai and many other stories, KAL007, which I'm not supposed to talk about, which I never even had anything near or was even there at the time. But people were signing blank things.
Sure you weren't.
Because that was he was so good at what he did. This is the old era. When he took on Gulf and Western Corporation, one of the great conglomerates in the 1970s, even the New York Times backed on and buckled because he took on My Lai, they took on Watergate. But when you take on a private corporation, the quality of the lawyers they have and their willingness to sue surpasses anything a president and a Justice Department can bring.
Right.
So when you're goring these big companies, that's where the Harvard and Yale guys and gals go when they're not going into writing, like The Simpsons or going into advertising. They're there to make sure you don't get a peep out of anybody.
That's right.
So there's the real danger. And then, the stress they're going to cause you or Siobhan or anybody is going to be debilitating,
Yeah.
And that's where you'll have the like you get into a car accident because, geez, you're so stressed out.
Right.
Or this and that.
Yeah. So they do cause it, but indirectly.
Oh, yeah. But you have to be very careful, about the way you talk because people will just pounce you. In fact, I was just at the police station, but we're not going to talk about that because somebody's saying stuff about me.
Right.
It's like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
So, and you're doing God's work if we want to bring her into it. So you got to be careful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's outrageous what happens.
With what we found, it is so, we were very careful to make sure that everything was legally written, professionally written, no emotional speculation, so that type of, way to say, well, this is a conspiracy, you're reading into things, so that no one could do that. And thankfully, it did work. And because it is mapped out as a business discussion and not, a discussion of, you plotted to kill us all off or something like that, because then you're not going to be heard if you bring out things of that nature. So we always tell people, bring it out in the business thing. And at the end of the day, this is just big business. You and I aren't people. We're on a fact sheet or statistics on a worksheet, and they see certain types of individuals are costing the federal government money, and they're just trying to figure out a way to not spend that money. It's nothing personal. It's just business.
Well, that's what they do to veterans, and we talk about that. It's like, and I've talked about that with my dad, too. My dad, who's a Vietnam veteran, he said to me, he said to me once, he said, Matt, sometimes I think they just want to kill me off, so they don't have to pay for me. And it's like, because, from my vantage point, veterans to the government are, they're just, they're numbers on a balance sheet.
But it's a system to continually deny.
Yeah.
We found out with all the stuff that's last years, they deny. Then they'll deny again. And then if Congress forces them to do something, they'll create a new program.
Yeah.
They're going to deny it again. But when you say that they want to kill you all, they don't want to kill you physically. They want to silence you.
Right.
And Oprah Winfrey was sued by the state of Texas
I remember that.
for what was called agricultural libel, because she had a guest, Richard Rhodes, who won the Pulitzer Prize for his book Dark Sun. Great book about the atomic bomb. And he wrote one about the meat industry, saying that the precursors of, the conditions that created mad cow disease in England, and my brother's lived there a good chunk of his adult life. He can't give blood outside of England because everybody's that's ate meat's been exposed to mad cow disease. He said they're right here in the United States. Just like bovine somatropin is legal in the United States, where in Canada in 1999 they had a huge scandal because Monsanto had bribed the Canadian FDA to ignore their own research that showed it was a carcinogen.
Yeah.
So it's just, they took Oprah to court.
Yep.
She spent millions of dollars. She wins the case.
Yeah.
But that book never got into the stores. People don't talk about that.
Right.
Because how many people are Oprah Winfrey that can actually afford that? And then she's going to get punished by any food industry people that advertise in her show. The food industry was one of the biggest advertisers in the print media, particularly newspapers, which are dying, but you can't offend them.
Yeah.
They'll take the advertising right out of you. There's so many ways to silence people in the United States.
There are.
It kind of makes the crude stuff, like in Russia or something, they don't need that.
Right.
They can just stop you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No,
and
that is true.
It's so true that the media, the mainstream media, in the fact that the way that they're controlled, it does prevent so much good information from getting to the public.
Yeah.
One example is in September 26th, I believe, I traveled to Vienna, Austria, and I addressed the United Nations. I was the only non-doctor citizen invited from around the world. And there was not one news article that told the world that happened.
Right.
And that was the biggest step forward for paying community rights, because it was brought to the largest stage in the world. There were diplomats. It was played live to 7 nations: Russia, United States, France, Austria, Germany, United Arab Kingdom, and China. There were reporters from every nation there. Not one of them were brought forth the discussion points that we brought forth, and there were 4 other attendees as well, all doctors from various parts of the world, who gave similar testimony to mine, which shows the UN that this is a global coordinated campaign on the withdrawal of access to pain medicine, which actually conflicts with the UNIGOS goals, which is why I was brought.
Yeah.
You're finding out about life, huh? Because I was a journalist and an activist. You can bring anything up, and if everybody decides to ignore it, and Matt knows what I'm talking about. We don't even talk about this stuff anymore. He doesn't want to talk about municipal politics. It didn't even make any difference what we were talking about when you would let me have the forum to talk about it. They just shun you. You become a non-person. They don't talk about it. It can be something so egregious and something that should be addressed.
Right.
And it's almost like a Puritan's Victorian society from 120 years ago or something. No, we're not going to talk about, let's say, in the old days, they didn't talk about child molestation or what happened to girls, stuff like that. It wasn't talked about.
Right.
And then it doesn't exist. And you're going to find out something. If they don't talk about it, it doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
And I've seen that.
And it's hard to be a whistleblower. We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah. After Brad Birkenfeld, there was many others.
In the past 2 years, I have been greatly disillusioned about the freedoms that American
Yeah.
citizens think they have.
Right.
Because I was, this really opened my eyes as a person. I was in an insurance position, thought I was well informed, and this really opened my eyes so that there is this huge underbelly of the United States that, I've heard it 1,000 times, and I myself was like, okay, conspiracy. And because a lot of times the way things are said makes it that way as well.
Yeah.
But once I became into this position and I started whistleblowing, like you had mentioned, it's done all indirectly. You can't say anybody's doing anything to you, and if you say it, you look crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all just little passive-aggressive regulatory issues that you get everywhere you go. They just make your life hard.
Yeah.
And continue to try. I've actually reported for several years since I started a harassment issue that my state will refuse to assist on. And they actually gleefully laughed about because they don't like what I'm doing. So I don't have my civil rights in my state for due process of law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been through it. I'm not saying it's the same thing. And so I was at the police station today.
Yeah.
People will
truly
ignore.
shocking. I never imagined seeing this in my country from, I got my eyes opened to an area I just knew was really there until I got pushed into this work.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something. And we're not going to bring it up here. It wouldn't even do any good, even if I did bring it up. But it's something like everybody knows about. We use the word malfeasance.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows about like a certain corruption and stuff. And folks, this isn't what you're thinking. The old stuff we beat. We went after, or I went after, and Matt, helped give me the forum, and Jim talked about it somewhat.
Sure.
It's not that, but people are like here in Peyton Place, where my parents' friends from the early 40s, she wrote Peyton Place. Nobody talks about what's going on.
Yeah.
So here we are in Peyton Place, and people know the stuff that's happened. Transgression, this and that.
Yeah.
But they don't talk about it. If you bring it out in a story, they ignore it, and then they act on the reality. Because Matt, I've talked to Matt for years. Reality is socially defined. So if they don't talk about something that they all know about,
right,
it's socially defined as it never happened.
It never happened.
And then officially they're going to act on that it never happened.
Exactly.
And then if you come back with literally, because you've got the notes, you've got emails, you've got this, that, nobody sued you over the story you wrote, this and that.
Yeah.
It's still,
Yeah.
because they are anticipating that nobody's going to talk about it. The media is not going to talk about it. And I'll tell you, Matt, it's better to be a non-person like Russia. Victoria, who's Russian, helped me do that. It's better to be a non-person rather than have like the union leader say nasty and horrible things about it.
Right.
We're not talking about flower pot, mavens and stuff like that, because that's par for the course.
Yeah.
That's some gadfly that used to be around here. I guess he still is. But the way they can control reality, and if you just don't talk about it, because people have so much in their mind, and you have to be reminded about something. Even if you've read a story, it's not going to just necessarily stick there. And then somebody will bring another version of the story, and they'll go to that one. That will become the reality.
Yeah.
And I've seen in my lifetime so many different things. Like in 2015, everybody realizes, just like in 1995, people are being under-medicated. And you have the research. Then you can see it turn overnight. They change the rhetoric about what it is. Now it's a opiate crisis, and it's affecting everybody.
Yeah.
And then it becomes something else.
Yeah.
And you've changed reality, because that's the dynamic in the consciousness that's a living thing.
Right.
That we're part of right now.
Right. Yeah. Rhonda in the Facebook live chat says they do it a la Scientology style. I think she's referring to how they intimidate you and smear you.
Yeah.
And Gia says, I've had repercussions from my film, but we have to speak out.
Oh, you're always going to
we have to.
get both barrels of the shotgun.
Yeah.
I mean, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up the social, what is socially happening and what happened and what didn't. And it actually, the CDC guidelines, when they came forth, and as I said before, they knew that there was going to be pushback. So they actually lined up a multitude of reports to run multiple strategies as a way to satisfy each audience
Right.
that was going to be consuming information, the anti-opiate audience, the sick audience, the elderly audience, and the young audience. And we actually have an organization that has been used, Apps Associates, who is number one contracted. And if you look at what they do for a living, this organization has been around for approximately 50 years. It's a private enterprise. And the founder actually wrote a book all about the art of manipulation.
Yeah.
And Apps Associates is a social engineering firm
Yeah.
that tells you how to implement mass governmental change to make the population accept it. And generally, they're used in third world countries that we're trying to bring, modern day technologies to, water systems, things like that, bringing them churches and schools when we go into third world countries to bring aid. But they have actually hired this company, and we've tracked close to $1 billion given to this one enterprise to build this entire campaign. So essentially, the entire healthcare system is in the place and in the sole control of Apps Associates, a very small, privately owned firm.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's the way it is. We have a U.S. senator here, a Democrat, who sold out to Hospital Corporation of America, which was the Frist family. Bill Frist,
Bill Frist, yeah.
was the Republican. He's the majority leader. He was worth like $15 million. His brother's a billionaire from private hospitals. In the Clinton administration, they were fined like $250 million for Medicaid fraud. They just got hit with others, and they almost snapped up our local hospital. They're snapping up other hospitals. They're part of the new paradigm at our Veterans Administration because
Really? Yeah.
we are ground one for it. And they always gave money to the Republicans like Kelly Ayotte. Well, guess what? A certain senator's got they're not money contributions. And her husband's law firm got the lobbying contract, which is worth far more than.
Yeah.
And nobody talks about it.
Right.
All of a sudden, the whole thing about privatizing the VA was anathema. It was, which is curse on everybody. You don't want to do that. But of course, the Republicans were always expert at cutting funding for the VA and creating crises.
Right.
And then now it's working. And now the Democrats, a certain Democrat, sign off. I actually talked to somebody, a staffer of one of our congressional delegations, didn't even know about it.
Oh, no kidding.
'Cause it's right there.
Right,
it
right.
all hides in plain sight.
Right,
And you
right.
can just go
Yeah.
on the records. And then you tell somebody, oh, that can't be true. Oh, yeah, I guess, I made up the FEC records
Right.
and the Union Leader article talking about the new contract.
Yeah, yeah.
They'll just ignore it.
Rhonda says they were also aware of the harms these guidelines would cause.
Oh, yeah.
Again, referring to the CDC guidelines. And GSS history repeats the chronic pain community are the current targets.
You know what chronic pain does to somebody like one of those veterans with PTSD? It's a cycle that just goes into each other.
Yeah.
It was
no doubt.
awful up there when they just took it overnight in Manchester, not necessarily Massachusetts, because then it got, like nationwide.
Yeah.
And the guys, these are like the guys from Vietnam and stuff that have been lying on these. But, look at if you're a politician. You're getting hit by somebody because of the drug situation. I just told you I went down to do some business, and I handled a drug overdose out here, calling in, standing over the guy till the people could get here.
Yeah.
And I know that'll be all the thing, this, horrible, blah, 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 blah. So you're a politician getting, I was going to use a bad term, getting grief for the situation here. So now you've got the opiate crisis, and that not only you recognize that. I'm not talking about anybody specific.
Right,
it's
right.
everybody.
Right.
Everybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All mayors are doing this.
Right.
You recognize the crisis. You get some of the heat. You're doing something, and now Uncle Sugar is going to start shaking some money bags out of you. Send you all equipment, this, that, and the other thing. Lots of jobs. Lots of this, that, and the other thing. Maybe there'll be some special powers coming along the pike in a year or two.
Right.
But and for the fact, because we had one politician that was saying a drug overdose, and it was some guy that had a diabetic coma.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, but it's a win-win situation. if you don't, it's a win-win situation if you're a politician. Because the first casualty of war is the truth. And the first skill of any politician is going to be successful is to lie. Doesn't mean you're going to have to be Le Grand Orange, in the White House, and just he's going to make Joseph Goebbels, look like a piker. The minister of propaganda in somebody's regime.
Well, when you're talking about these politicians, though, to quote our president, or to paraphrase something that he said, I'm sure some of them are very good people.
Some very fine people.
No,
I just went over it again.
No, you're conflating two different quotes.
Oh, that was Charlottesville. There were fine people on both sides.
I wasn't talking about Charlottesville. I was talking about a different, when he was talking about Mexicans.
But see, even if you are... Jeez, let's not get...
Referring to politicians, some politicians I'm sure are very fine people.
Oh, jeez, we had some... Yeah, I used that one, and then I had the thing from the Wild Bunch. But see, if you are a politician that cares, and you do... If you weren't to get on board this, you'd be sunk completely.
Right, right.
And it's just, once again, a machine. You're up against the machine.
Right.
And reality be damned.
Yeah.
But normal people, I've had opiates since I was 16 years old, off and off, for teeth, pain, my back, which I'm disabled for. Once they were gone, they were gone. I didn't even use them all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the rhetoric that is being pushed forward is just, it's a lot of it, I believe, to just be made up. A big push that we are seeing now is the upstream prevention. And that's a theory that's being pumped out from the special interest groups that, well, if a patient never has an opiate to begin with, even in surgery, then they will never know what it feels like, and they will never abuse drugs. So we must, at all costs, make sure nobody gets exposed to it. And we've even seen discussions where they're talking about not even using it in surgery. Surgery.
It's nuts. Even more suffering.
I got my hernia operation. She says, well, we're not going to give you any opiate efficacy. Yes, you are. You know how I am.
Yeah.
They come in and talk to me and says, I have no problems. So they gave me a prescription for like 10 pills.
Yeah.
Because, I was getting operated on both sides, a hernia operation. Right.
And
Tylenol is going to help.
Actively trying to figure out, and it's actually a big smoke and mirror that's going on TV and through the internet right now that we really want our community to recognize, so that they no longer, kind of see the thing, but look behind the man in the curtain. There is something going on, and it's very obvious. Like the interagency task force televised on I believe in the 9th and the 10th of May, the end of their negotiations for the recommendations for what to do to help pain patients. And they put it on TV, and they let people make comments and things of that nature. But that's just a public show. Of course, they already have the document ready and teed up to Congress. They're not actively negotiating it based on what you're saying to them. They just need to put a public hearing on to make it look like they listen to you, make it look like you're being validated.
Yes.
But the report's already done.
Make it look like they care about you.
Exactly. It's all just, and actually we saw there's the Drug Supply Chain Act, which we found requires 5 public FDA hearings. These hearings are not being held because they care. They're required to hold one a year.
Right.
They're just checking off the box, and they're pretending they care.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Gia says...
I think, when more of the advocates who are online and in this community realize that these regulation.gov questions that they're sending out, they don't care. That's a part of the study. They're collecting your information to gather the information to engage, to give it to the study investigators. Their decisions are already made. If you look at the recommendations that are going to Congress, they're recommending the development of more guidelines,
right?
Which is actually what the study is for. They're making guideline-driven medicine for all, and they just started with opioids because it was low-hanging fruit with a community without a voice. So they picked a weak community to start with, and they're going to be expanding out over years. So there's actually a 10-year program. It's scheduled every 10 years under the Healthy People campaign. Right now, we're running out to Healthy People to 2030 is what we're actively seeing at the moment. and they reprioritize the goals every 10 years. And that, I actually feel the Green New Deal is a part of this, because a big speech that we hear on TV that basically the whole world is going to end in 2030 if we don't do this. Literally, Armageddon's coming.
Yeah, I heard that back in 1976.
And I think if Armageddon was coming, we would see a lot. I mean, granted, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we don't want to get too...
There would be a little bit more volatility going on if we were that close to the brink of extinction.
Yeah, that's another
but
show
it
Matt and I are
makes
going to
sense
have.
into this context. They have until 2030 to finish it. So they need to make a big public statement about why it needs to be done right now.
Well, to
because
get the
that's
money.
actually the Health and All Policies approach to make you upgrade your home.
Gia says in the Facebook live chat, prescribing and opiate production are down, and veteran pain patient suicides and overdoses are up. Doesn't take a genius. And she also says, no, I know they don't. And she says, we can pull our DNA and put it through Prometheus.
Prometheus?
I don't know. And it's scientifically tells us what we will be addicted to if exposed. Why is science being ignored? That's my question. Well, science can be inconvenient. And Jenny says, when the pain gets to be too much and you can't take it anymore, suicide becomes the answer for many, and medicine basically hands us the permission slip. I've lost too many with RSD to suicide because of politicians voting their medications, or their medicine away, rather.
I tell you, sometimes I'm sleeping at night, and just 1,000 milligrams of naproxen is not gonna help.
Yeah.
And I had a prescription for opiates that are expired.
Yeah.
I think it's oxycodone, which I don't like to take.
Right.
But it's there in case I ever hit 9 or 10 again. You're
Yeah.
thinking, maybe, even if it's 2 years old, maybe I should cut one in half tonight and take it.
Right.
But, you just go through a sleepless night.
Yeah.
You know.
By the way, hello to Ed Murphy in the Facebook live chat.
Because I also was, taught that, because I don't like drugs, I'm very sensitive, have all sorts of allergies, that you can break a pain cycle. Like, I've seen it happen with myself.
Sure. Yeah.
They give you a dose of opiates or something, shot, and you break the pain cycle. But
Yeah.
we're all going to be good Puritans, and we're going to use our minds. As we're sawing off your leg, just think of, lay back and think of England or something else.
Yeah, my favorite is the study that they're running to see if harp music can help you in the ER.
Oh, very
if I
nice.
am screaming in a pancreatic attack and someone comes in with a harp, I don't know I'm not to be held responsible for what I do. Because, this is real. Like, the stuff that they're suggesting us to do is insulting.
Yeah.
It is patronizing. And actually, if you look at the government websites, they're claiming, evidence-based this, evidence-based that. They don't have evidence. They're using us, the patient, to figure out, does physical therapy work? Does massage therapy work? And the only way to do that was to, as any type of scientific control, you would have to have, controls in place. And you can't tell if it's working if we're medicated. You need to take the medication away, make us go to physical therapy, and see if we get better. So they're actually figuring out best practices for the future generation off of our backs. And none of us agreed to be studied and tortured.
Hello
and
to
that is exactly what they're doing.
Hello to Teresa Ann Cashman in the Facebook live chat.
Matt, I can. Cognitive behavioral therapy can work for certain levels of pain. I'd say maybe up to 5 or 6, but it has to be where you're properly trained in it by a therapist you trust.
Yeah.
But that how many
Exactly.
situations are you going to have with a person you've developed a deal of trust?
Right.
Not just the standard 12-week thing, but and
when it's forced on you, you're not going to get the same. Like, if you're going
Right.
in and you want to
'Cause
do
you-
it, you're going to apply the practice, you're going to learn. If they're trying to force you against your will, all it's going to do is cause mental duress, and you're not learning anything. You're making it worse.
Right, because
So,
at the end of like a relationship where you've been trained about CBT, and then you have a trust in the person because you are dealing with psychology. But the idea that you can just give somebody a card, or you can go on an app or online, and it's going to happen. It's like, I remember in the back of Popular Mechanics, they had stuff, was it Rosicrucianism, and and they got the beam of light from the back hitting you in the head, and you think, if I can just concentrate, I'd be able to, be Aladdin or something.
Ooh, have fun.
Be able to astrally project myself everywhere. Guess what? It don't work that way.
No, exactly, because a lot of this is the goal of the study is self-management, and they have dictated that very clearly in the Living Well Chronic Illness Blueprint, that they are encouraging self-management to save healthcare costs. So they want you to learn to meditate and to do yoga and to do cognitive behavioral therapy, even though they acknowledge in the report verbatim this type of treatment does not replace medical treatment, but we theorize that it could help. So
right,
it
could.
As a complementary therapy.
Yeah, to be fair, some of these things can certainly supplement.
In the right environment.
They can supplement your health, but it's not a replacement. No.
Exactly. And when it's done nefariously, you've tricked the person, you're being dishonest with the person. They can't get the benefit. A lot of the things that are being promoted, I support if done ethically, with transparency, and with the patient agreement.
Right.
That's what we're missing here, is that you got the doctors forcing stuff down your throat because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble, and then you can't be listened to, and it's just creating a serious hostile environment. I've attended many classes where they're giving the continuing education credits to the doctors to teach them how to handle us. The training sessions that are taking place are gaslighting sessions. They're teaching you, and I'm sure this is courtesy of ACT Associates, how to engage a manipulative conversation to take it back from the person and invalidate them. It's actually a form of emotional abuse, and we are teaching to engage emotional abuse and gaslighting to any patient who stands up for themselves. And standing up for yourself is a red flag that you're a seeker. You're advocating for your own life.
Oh, I got one of those. It's the old VA before we got the new director, who's a great guy. It's you come in there, you're like an agonizing pain or something.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God! I just I'm in a truck.
Yeah.
Which my sister must be sprung. The springs are long past sprung, which is not exactly good on a back.
Right.
And I'd come from Dartmouth Hitchcock because they were one of mine. Thinking, am I going to get home? I'm bouncing along. And so as I'm leaving there, to the right, I've got the VA, and my back is starting to come out. So I go in there, and then, to have them look at it because I'm rated for my back.
Mm-hmm.
They are required to treat me.
Yeah.
And then I hear of the doctor, this is, histrionic personality just coming in here. You're being manipulated to come get the.
The doctor said that to you?
To a person that the one that had let me come in rather than wait outside for hours.
The doctor said that to the person who brought you about you, and you overheard it?
You could wait outside in an urgent. We don't have an emergency room. Urgent care forever.
Oh,
you know that.
Oh yeah.
So I got in there because I was hurting, and you know what? I have a demonstrative personality.
Right.
And I like to bitch a lot. So I got in there because I was. This really sucked.
Yeah.
And then I heard the doctor wasn't exactly sympathetic, and they have a lot of temporary doctors up there because of the staff.
Sure.
This is the old, up till, remember the other director, which you remember a little of that.
Yeah.
But so I'm up there, and then I hear her talk to the person within my earshot. Oh, a histrionic personality comes in, and which means actor, histrionic.
Right. Yeah.
And then you bring him in there. That didn't exactly help things with old Hoppy.
I wouldn't have thought so. Wow.
But we won't go any further into that.
John and I are talking with Lauren Deluca, the founder of the Chronic Illness Advocacy and Awareness Group, and we had some.
You don't want to go back,
right? We had Jenny in the Facebook live chat says, "I am put under sedation to break the pain down to a tolerable level, but it's still there every second of every day. No one understands how horrible that really is.
I don't even go. I haven't gone for the last 2 months
Yeah,
for help.
yeah. Teresa Ann
I've
Cashman.
heard so many patients, they won't even go to the ER at
Right.
all because they expect to be abused. And
Well,
it's
yeah.
becoming a really serious, dangerous position.
And they treat you like a drug seeker. Yeah.
Or you
Which
have
is
borderline
ironic because they're
personality.
spending all of this time saying
Yeah.
that you're not allowed to abuse people with a substance use disorder, but then they use that type of behavior and they project it onto us now.
Yeah.
So while you're working to destigmatize one community, they're heavily making sure that we do get stigmatized.
Right.
I was talking to somebody, I think a friend Elizabeth Robb, it might not have been her, about borderline personality, which is mostly women. And I guess there's some political aspects of that or whatever. But one of the aspects of borderline personality allegedly now is that they're always seeking attention, and they're going to go to always asking for care. So they're always down at the hospital emergency room. That's part of borderline personality, and overwhelmingly women. So it's creating
and that's actually
these models.
A part of what we are looking into because so many women do suffer from undiagnosed chronic illnesses more so than men. A lot of the women, it seems that we don't get our diagnoses as most. It's actually proven that although we all get gaslit, women more often than men will be gaslit and always told that our symptoms are related to family stress and things of that nature. Then if a man presented with the same symptoms, a MRI would be ordered.
Right.
A woman would be given an antidepressant and told to go home and take a nap. So our medical complaints are not taken with the same seriousness, and that's actually been an ongoing issue for years, even beyond this crisis. But I think it's really starting to become even more weaponized under this. As we know, some of the surgeries that they are testing through medical centers right now, they chose that women's mastectomies would stop having post-op pain relief at all.
Wow.
The entire breast are removed.
That's
and
nuts.
You are left with nothing but an ice pack.
That's awful. Gia says we use CBT, meditation, stretching, exercise, ice, and pain medication just to not kill ourselves. Nobody with real persistent pain is getting high. We want to live. That's it.
It doesn't get you high.
Right.
When you're in agonizing pain.
Right, exactly.
You're not like, oh, boy, do I feel...
right, what a trip.
It's like you can go to sleep and you're not asking God to kill you.
Right, right.
Like strike you dead.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that's only happened...
That's a big part that people don't recognize. We are already doing every coping skill possible. The fact that we are still here, alive, and trying, we're doing it. Nobody is ever pain-free, even with medication.
Right.
The medication just makes it to a tolerable level. I mean, with what happened to me, I literally got through an endoscopic ultrasound, I caused a pancreatic attack, which ended up collapsing quite literally. My veins from my heart fell and crushed my entire digestive tract.
Oh, my
in
God.
multiple places in my intestines and my stomach and my kidney. And I was left for 9 months told to stop complaining.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm lucky
Suck
I
it
was
up.
a healthy young girl when it happened, or I highly likely would have died.
Wow.
And I was close to death when I got adopted by when I was taken in by my current doctor, because I was blackballed across the state because I was advocating for myself, and my doctor saw it as a red flag and sent notes to every doctor not to treat me, as she was sending a referral.
Advocacy,
Which is illegal because she's doing healthcare fraud by sending me to an appointment that she's ensuring I can't get help at.
Oh, my God. Wow.
And
I ended up having to leave my job, and I became disabled because this doctor went out of her way to make sure I could not get help anywhere in this state.
That is
and
awful.
The only reason I did get help is by going to Washington, D.C., creating this organization, and I got on the radio. A doctor heard me and looked at my medical chart and sent me to a hospital he knew that was still accepting patients with a note saying, I've seen her records, she does look sick. And just basically with a note saying she's not a drug addict, can you at least look? He didn't say to give me treatment, he didn't say to do anything, he just said, look at her, honestly. And then within 3 months, they found out, well, your duodenum is shut completely. Your intestines are clamped shut in at least 2 places, if not more. And your kidney's been bleeding on and off.
Oof.
I had bruises from head to toe, and I went down 30 pounds and was pure gray. I was passing out on a regular basis. They were going to let me die.
Wow.
Rather than prescribe the opiate that, if it was given to me when it was needed, I never would have became disabled. I
Right.
never would have got my stomach crushed, and I would have went right back to work.
Yeah, yeah.
Can they?
Because they were told this is the new strategy, self-management. Don't give them treatment. Send them home. Tell them to do cognitive behavioral health treatments, and to tell them to deep breathe and just ride it out. I did. And I spent
Awful.
6 weeks in pancreatic attack, which caused me to develop another condition, superior mesotonic artery syndrome, that crushed my entire digestive tract. I mean, I'm essentially a live accident victim that walks around now because they can't uncrush my body without doing extensive surgery to remap my entire inside,
Oh yeah.
which is extremely dangerous. So they're not looking to do that unless they absolutely have to, because it could be, it could go bad, and they don't want to make that risk.
Lauren, Rhonda's asking an important question in here. Were you able to take action against the doctor?
No, I did file a federal lawsuit in the federal court, and the judge who had the case had actually forwarded it to another judge for an opinion as to whether or not he was going to give me a date in court. And then he sent me a dismissal. Of course, right after I spoke at the United Nations, he decided to dismiss my case 3 days later. And I received a note in the mail that they dismissed my case, no precedence, no court case, nothing. And they actually wrote up an 8-page backstory on my case that I did not submit to the court, that I submitted to the Massachusetts Medical Board to this day. Pretend they don't have a copy of it. Well, please tell me how Judge Tillman in the state of Massachusetts got a copy of it.
Right.
And
Miracle.
why he wrote out an 8-page backstory, how did he get that?
Right.
They committed high crimes to dismiss my case.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, Elizabeth Ropp is here, the Acupunk. Hello.
Hi.
Who has helped me with pain?
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah. Through
people we
acupuncture.
know,
Yeah. Absolutely. Rhonda in the Facebook live chat was saying, and how the hell is therapy and massage going to help our, I don't know how to say this, Chiari malformation? You can't massage one's brain.
It depends. I think that Matt Connarton Unleashed massages the brain.
I do massage the brain. Yes, that's a good point. Yes.
And here's one interesting observation. I don't understand why the brain has different opiate receptors. That seemingly in human evolution, our brain has evolved to accept opiates as painkillers. That must be some fiendish plot. Maybe it's the devil.
It might be the devil.
It could be, because that would be evolution.
Right.
That's evolution. It's got to be.
That has to be from the devil. Yes. Gia says, I use guided imagery to imagine my brain isn't slumping. I imagine cotton candy is filling the hole in my head. Oh. And hello to Wayne Noel in the Facebook live chat. Gia says, Lauren, I can't get a surgeon to touch my revision surgery. I'm sure it's the film. I have to go to New York. I understand. Yeah, so Gia, because Gia had done that film, that documentary. Forgive me, Gia, the title escapes me. Maybe you could drop a link into the Facebook live chat. But, Gia had done that documentary, and it sounds like she's gone through some of the same of what you've gone through, Lauren, where there's been some blowback. It's incredible, too. The medical community that, they take the Hippocratic Oath, and then they find a way to punish you for speaking out. I mean, it's actually kind of shocking to me. It's not
regulation
shocking.
Because you've been through regulation. Where are you going?
I'm going upstairs because I'm going to be on rock, paper, hand grenades with Gary.
Yes.
I figured he'd be down here, but he's upstairs.
Oh, okay.
Wait,
do you have anything to say?
Is there a feud still?
No.
There's
not
no feud.
between me and Gary. We were what were the Hoppy and Hoppy show last week?
Yes,
oh, really?
yes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to get sidetracked with all. I mean,
Right.
you're
Sorry,
welcome to welcome to stick around, Elizabeth, if you want to be part of the discussion. But that's up to you.
But I was going to go just get ready for the.
Okay. No, that's fine. Okay.
Come up and join us afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Bye bye. All right. Elizabeth leaves us, but what I was saying is it's just shocking to me that I expect it from politicians, right? But doctors, finding ways to punish you. It's just, it's stunning to me.
And what's truly terrifying is we have the doctors who have been, kind of stuck in the rock and hard place. But the new doctors that are coming fresh out of college they have been taught in school to deny pain is happening to your patient. I actually had met some recent graduates at one of the advocacy events, and a future doctor looked to me, and actually her face was glowing with pride and admiration, asking me, what do I think about the glorious works of Andrew Kolotnik? And I said, I think he's a coward. And I think
Right.
he is not he does not bring out anything factual. He actually spends half his day online badgering sick people and making fun of them. If you are, as I represent a movement for chronic illness patients, one thing that I always make sure I do is I respect the opposing side, their opinions and the needs of people who do suffer from addiction, because they deserve treatment and respect and dignity just like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And this man who's supposed to be, all-powerful, sitting at, the governor of governors meeting, rubbing elbows with everybody in the country, telling them what should be done, says the most vile and disgusting things about people who are just trying to fight for their lives.
Right.
People, grandmas, these are people's children who are 5 years old with gastroparesis, and he goes online and he mocks them. This is not a man of dignity. This is definitely not a man that any politician should be listening to. He's a shrink who spent half of the 90s running up and down New York, giving $10,000 incentives to prescribe buprenorphine. He's essentially a farmer rep who worked his way up because of his connections with his father. He sits on the PRI Insurance Board of Directors.
Mm-hmm.
That's a medical malpractice insurer.
Oh.
Everything this gentleman does, he profits off of what he says.
Always follow the money.
To be put in charge of this is someone who profits off of their own rhetoric.
Right. Gia says these cases are too expensive to try, so attorneys can't get their beaks wet due to the caps in California anyway. And the film is Gia's film is called Writing for Ryan. You can find it at chiaridocumentary.com. Filming is done and it's now being edited. So for folks who want to find that, it sounds like she's gone through some of what you have. Well, Lauren, we're kind of getting into the home stretch here, and so I don't want to run out of time. So before we wrap up, and you've been so generous with your time today, and we appreciate it tremendously. It's been a great discussion, but I want to make sure we get a chance to, for people joining us late, let's make sure we mention the website and the dossier and anything else that you want us to know about or how people can help. Oh, you have another fan, by the way, in the Facebook live chat, Sabrina Petruzzelli. Forgive me if I butchered that. She says, "Go Lauren," in all caps. So wonderful. Hi, Sabrina. But anything you want to make sure that we know, and how people can get involved if they want to, and et cetera. Just anything that we didn't cover, and just remind us of anything that you need us to know in terms of your website, resources online, social media, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on so we could actually share this really important information with the public, because that is what, that's the reason we do this work, is to let people know what is going on, what is the truth, because there's so many mistruths out there. And the only way we fix this mess is getting down to the truth and having these hard discussions. So we can be found on ciaag.net. We actually, our website is continuously growing and changing as things, this is a very fast-moving field, but we're growing our coalition partnerships. So if there is anybody who is a founder or even works for a nonprofit or an organization that works within the illness and disease field of healthcare or even political action groups, I please encourage you to reach out to me at info@ciaag.net. We're always looking to collaborate and grow this, because we know that there are powers in numbers. So we are bringing together all of the various diseases to bring one strong group, because alone, Chiari versus EDS versus pancreatitis, their voices are being drowned out by the machine. But if we bring together every disease who has this common issue, we are an unstoppable community. We just have to make that step towards each other. So anybody who's interested in collaborating, we're always interested in that. And a big thing that we have going on, and I would really love to see anyone out there who's interested or has a loved one or in themselves in pain, we do have a state leadership program, and it is free because we designed this to make sure that everybody is able to advocate no matter what your limitation. Even if you're stuck in bed and you can't leave the house, we've designed it so you can engage and do things. And a lot of it is just you sign up and we will send you weekly emails that we are asking everybody to engage in coordinated calls to action because they're hearing from one person here, one person there, and they're all being ignored. But if we put everybody under a singular movement, they're receiving the same types of messages repeatedly on certain days, the government will start to realize the movement they've been working to suppress is coming together.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that will get them to start letting us at the table. We have made some major steps forward in this past month. Legislative offices, for the first time, have reached back out post-meeting and invited me back to Washington to continue our discussion. That was the first time that's happened in the past 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So we're slowly being invited into Washington, D.C. to have a real seat at the table. And the only way we can really get at the table is by everybody continuing to stand behind this issue and literally don't let people tell you it's not true. Because a lot of what we face online is a lot of people who just don't understand, or people who intentionally don't want you to call and fight for your rights will tell you that the document's, not accurate, or it's a waste of your time. And unfortunately, that's a lot of bad counter-information that's hurting the patients because we are doing everything we can to tell you tried and true grassroots methods that do work. So we would love people to join this state leadership. We're developing panels in all 50 states because each state has a different pilot program. So each state has a little bit of a different approach. And I'm going to be, working one-on-one with the leaders to help really expand this organizational reach and our movement across this nation so that everybody is saying the same thing and bringing forth the same thing. As it's difficult to articulate this without sounding like a conspiracy theorist. So because it is,
I think you've done great.
So insane. I mean, if I wasn't living this life, I wouldn't believe it. It sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
But we want to be very careful that we educate people on the way to explain this so that they're not disregarded or told that they're not true.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is going to be just educating you on what we find because we're not done. We're going to keep looking. And if people could just get involved. And our biggest push is we're asking everyone to continue to send a copy of the dossier, Violation of a Nation, which is on our website, CIAG.net, and pump it out to the media.
Yep.
Because the mainstream media, we know, essentially has been told you're not to run this.
Right.
However, being a media yourself, you must know there is a tipping point that if they get too much pressure, people will loosen those reins and say, okay, you can talk about this much.
Right.
And then we keep doing that, and eventually our story will be public.
God willing, yeah,
and
absolutely.
We need the power of the people to demand that this story will not go silent, as you had suggested earlier. If it's not talked about, it didn't happen.
Right.
And their goal, I'm sure, is to get people to stop talking about this report and go back into the status quo where people are completing their regulation.gov, they're going to the HHS task force meetings, where they're just actually helping engage the study, and they don't know that. And that's what we really want to show people is that you've been egregiously duped and betrayed. And here's how we're going to clean it up and help you.
Yes,
and give you every tool you can. And we make everything for free. We do have some paid memberships. And, of course, encourage donations because we do run this all out of our own pocket.
You have expenses, of course.
But really, it's designed to teach you the truth so you can go to your reps and teach them the truth.
Yeah, right. Well, that's wonderful, Lauren. Thank you so much. We're gonna let you go again. You've been very generous with your time today, but we're almost out of it. So, thank you so much, Lauren Deluca, the founder of Chronic Illness Advocacy and Awareness Group. Yes, sir.
Can I just say one thing that Howard Zinn, the great left-wing activist and great historian, said, author of A People's History of America, talking about how he used to tell everybody that the FBI and CIA was spying on him, and they said, Howard, no, you're just paranoid. And then it all turned out to be true. What he said is, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't out to get you.
That's right. Very true. Very true. All right, Lauren, thank you so much again. Let's stay in touch. Keep us posted, and we will have you on again in the near future, because this is not something that's going to be going away anytime soon, I'm sure. So we'll do this again.
Yeah, absolutely not. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You got it. Same here. Thanks, Lauren. Bye-bye.
Hey,
all right, Lauren Deluca.
I guess I've been invited up onto the Gary Hopper show, which will be my first.
You've never been on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper?
But Elizabeth Robb just sent me a message, I guess Hopper and Hoppy.
Wonderful.
And Roppy. And Roppy.
By the way, Tina Kaminsky just joined us in the Facebook live chat and says, I missed it. Don't worry, Tina. The video will, of course, remain on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. And if you missed any part of today's show, you'll be able to download it or stream it at will at WMNHradio.org, and it will be up there within the next 20 minutes or so. So no worries. Sabrina says thank you. Rhonda says, right on, Hoppy. You got a fan in Rhonda, I think. Gia says, thank you, Matt, Lauren, Jenny. We must stop the suicides. Patients, please work together. Great show. Elizabeth Ropp says, Matt, can you send Hoppy back up to be on the show with me and Gary? Well, I don't know. Based on your terrible grammar, Elizabeth, I don't think I will be. I'm kidding, of course.
There I come.
Oh, and Hoppy's got the patriotic sunglasses. We'll have a good time on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. All right, take care. Thank you. Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, of course, at coming up at 6 p.m. on Channel 23 if you're locally here in Manchester. And, of course, you can watch that online at manchestertv.org. And, by the way, in the background, to close us out on today's show, that is All About the Money, the Pierre J's extended version by Maja. All About the Money. I thought that was probably an appropriate song to end the show with, because, you know, as we were talking about during our discussion about all this, the reason this happens, it's all about the money. It's not about, our politicians and the pharmaceutical industry and the medical community and everything. It's all about the money. And if something doesn't make sense, like people needlessly suffering because they can't get the meds that they need or the help that they need or the surgery that they need, that's all about the money. That's the way it is. So thank you again, Lauren. Thank you to everybody in the Facebook live chat. Thank you to John Hopwood for being part of the discussion today. Like I said, if you missed any part of the show, it'll be up in just a few minutes at WMNHradio.org. And that's it for now. I will talk at y'all a little bit later. Bye, everybody.